Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Nanette. Nice to see
Hare
you.
Krishna, Maharaj.
So we're on text 42 of chapter 6. If you have your books, follow along. Ataya yoginam kule bhavati matam etadi dulataram loke jamma yadrisham. We have any reading volunteers?
I'll read, Maharaj.
We can read the verse.
You want me to read the English?
Yeah. Well, I just did the Sanskrit, so.
Okay. Birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. It is especially the case in the Acharya or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India, there are many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. By the grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. Fortunately, both our spiritual master, Om Vishnupada Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaja, and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord. And both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. Later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system.
Very nice. I think someone's phone is on annotation. Okay. So the verse is, or if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga. The previous one was the unsuccessful yogi after many births of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities born in a family of righteous people, born to a family of rich aristocracy. And today we're saying if someone practices for a long time, he takes birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Any reflections from this, from the esteemed group here? Any reflections? It's interesting, isn't it?
Guru Maharaj,
Yes.
I'm just curious, what about, I don't know if it pertains to the text, but what about like if you're born into a family who really has no inclination in spirituality whatsoever? You know what I mean?
Okay. So say it again, because maybe I missed the first part.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the text, but it pretty much said someone who has been spiritually inclined will be born into a family of acharyas, correct? Or am I misunderstanding that?
This one, if unsuccessful after a long practice of yoga, long, very long time. They'll take birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Such a birth is very rare. In the purport, it describes, what it's describing is in all the major temples of Vrindavan. It has a family lineage that goes back to the time of which, of course, you can't say it was Rupa and Sanatan and Gopal Bhatta and like that, but it comes from that they established priests in the temples, and that Goswami title, they actually made it their last name, isn't it true? They made it their last name, And so they're called Goswami families, and they're families of Acharya. They come from the original 6 Goswami, but they're called the Acharya families. And to take birth like that is very rare because, as Prabhupada says here in the commentaries, in India, there are so many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. Because previously, these families, and there still are some, Srila Prabhupada mentions it, that there are still some families that follow all the regulated principles, all the, there are so many sanskars, or so many, how do you translate sanskars? There's so many, how do you translate samskar, Nanteshwar? There's so many formulas, so many.
It's impressions, you can say.
What's that?
Impressions.
Yeah. So like the Goswami, they would literally, before giving birth to a child, even doing the act of procreation, perform so many different, like, what do you call it, processes that are mentioned in the Vedas. Like Prabhupada he would tell our grahastas chant 50 rounds prior to conception. And there's so many other things that that are there. And these Goswami families followed all those rules and regulations. And they were literally like the priests of the village. And so to take birth in that type of family, that from the very beginning, not even like the beginning of your life, hearing like the Bhagavatam in the womb, but even planning, Planned Parenthood is like a real, what would you say? Planned Parenthood for us means something different. You plan to be a parent. You don't just, that Planned Parenthood that they have out in the materialistic world is not Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood means that you plan to have a child and you undergo all the processes, all the different sanskars, all the different, I guess we can call them rules and regulations, all the different, like Nanteshwar says, impressions. In other words, we want to impress upon our mind, we want to have a proper consciousness for when we conceive the child. Because it's described that, especially the Prabhupada would tell us that many of the living entities on higher planets are praying to take birth in the Hare Krishna movement. because they get an opportunity from the very beginning of their life to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and associate with the holy name, have prasadam from the very beginning of their lives. And such a birth is very, very rare to have that opportunity. So even to take birth, Prabhupada mentions here that his spiritual master, of course, was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's son. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur went through, what would you say, deep meditative prayer. Because he was finding it difficult to find the right people to help propagate Krishna consciousness. So he was praying intensely, very, very intensely praying for a child that would appear in his family so that they could assist him in the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, took birth in that family. And it's described that upon his birth, his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck as looked like a Brahmin thread. It's like a Brahmin thread, wrapped, like our chanting thread. I use a short one. I don't like it wrapped around my neck because I always get caught and choked. So I just have mine on my shoulder. But the Brahmin thread usually goes around the neck and off to the right side. And then when the boy was only like a few months old, it was time for Rath Yatra in Jagannath Puri. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur was actually the person in charge of the Jagannath temple as the, what do they call it, magistrate of the district. And so the magistrate actually is the one who's ultimately in control. And so the Rath Yatra cart came by and it stopped in front of Bhakti Vinod Thakur's house, and his mother, Bhakti, or his wife, brought the child, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada's spiritual master, up onto the cart, and immediately a garland fell off the deity and wrapped around the neck of Bhakti Siddhanta. And so Bhakti Vinod took these different things as indications that Krishna had sent him a proper son. Later on, Bhakti Siddhanta had the whole Gita and the purport and the principle understanding. In other words, it was meant to, how it was meant to be delivered, memorized, and he was already giving lectures at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and very, very, very erudite scholar. And so Prabhupada was mentioning that his spiritual master got that training, and Prabhupada also got that training in the very beginning of his life from his father. The part I like about it, my takeaway from this, is that Prabhupada says later that they both had this opportunity and were trained by their parents from the very beginning. And then he said later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system. In other words, that parampara, that transcendental system of the parampara, Prabhupada said we met due to this transcendental system. What would you say? Guru, disciple becomes guru, then they become disciples, then their disciples become teachers, and their disciples become teachers. So this is a transcendental system. This is a transcendental system that Prabhupada is speaking of here. So the Acharya families are like that in Vrindavan. And some of them are very, very strict, and some of them have become a little less, a little less. You can see that they have you can even see they have certain physical features, isn't it? They have certain physical features that indicate, like Brahmin by birth, that they have Brahminical characteristics. So like that, Dr. George. So like that, it's like that. Any takeaways, or excuse me, reflections? I want to change that to reflection. Any reflections from this verse?
Rajmi Mataji, she had something.
For some reason, my volume's not very loud today. What's that?
I'm sorry, Maharaj. Actually, what I have is a question.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Sure.
And that's because that's my reflection on what Jorge was trying to say. If after unsuccessful, after long practice of yoga, what is the hope for us who do not take birth in a family of transcendentalists?
Our hope is very good because we did take birth in the family of transcendentalists. Biological birth is one thing. Initiation is another. There's one purport in my other book, anyway, that the process of Krishna consciousness, the following of the principles of Krishna consciousness is made easy by the initiation process of guru, when one takes on a guru, the process. Even it's stated, I wish I could remember where it's at, but it's stated that the regulator principles become very easy to follow. In other words, the process of devotional service becomes very easy to follow. And the fact that, Srila Prabhupada, when he came to the West, I do believe it was an arrival address in Los Angeles. And he said in that arrival class that he said, all my American boys and girls, all you American boys and girls have been sent to me by my spiritual master. In other words, they were actually sent. These disciples that Prabhupada had, he didn't, of course, he knows they're his disciples and he has to train them up, but he actually figured, or he actually considered them being sent by his spiritual master to help him in his mission, So, I mean, I'm reading a book and I can't remember the exact, every time I say the name, anyway, it's like all the ladies that were initiated by Prabhupada got together and to make a little book. I think Srila Prabhupada's love for his daughters, I think is the name of something like that. And it's about 500 pages long, quite a lot of people, a lot of lady devotees. And, some of these girls were 14, 15 years old joining the Hare Krishna movement, in the summer of 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. And they have amazing stories of having connection with Srila Prabhupada. And a lot of times it was just, like myself, I never sat down and had a conversation with Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I saw him walk. I tried to sneak along on the walks, but in those days, boy, you got axed real quick. But I did hear Srila Prabhupada give class. In fact, just the other day, I was trying to remember the exact dates of the classes that I attended. And so there's certain things that strike you with when you meet Srila Prabhupada, in that way. And there's Vani and Vapu. Vani means by hearing, just hearing Srila Prabhupada. Vapu means the physical form of Srila Prabhupada or any person. And so Vani is more important than just being next to someone, because if you hear from the person, and we reduce ahankara tachvinu, that we can remove the false ego and hear properly, then we have the great blessing of that type of association. Of course, some of these ladies were saying how blissful it was just, washing Prabhupada's clothes or cleaning the room or going on a walk or sitting in the class or, or instructions that he gave. I was just reading from, for some reason, it was written in second person. I don't think she actually, Nanda Rani, or her husband is Dayananda. And for some reason, it's written in second. It's not her speaking, it's somebody else saying that she was like this. Anyway, they ended up becoming the first temple, like 68, becoming the first temple presidents of LA. And they had this thing. And so Dayananda, he ended up becoming like vice president of IBM in the 80s or something like that. He was very intelligent. He actually learned Persian. He was in Iran preaching, and his wife was with him. And the boys say, "Oh, Prabhupada, Dayananda is so intelligent. He's so like this." And he says, "Yes, but his wife is much more intelligent than him." And then they would laugh. And they, no, he's also, yeah. And his wife is so much more intelligent. He is intelligent, but his wife is still. It was like an ongoing saga between a few of Prabhupada's close disciples. But she was instrumental in doing so many things, because to give instruction, to spread Krishna consciousness in places like Iran and stuff like that, it's not easy. Of course, Iran was different back in the 70s than it is now, but it was still a unique situation. And so they developed very, very strategic ideas. And when Prabhupada went to Iran, he went there one or two times, several times, I think. And he told that he was very happy there because the sound goes off 3 times a day for the prayers or whatever, like a siren and stuff like that. And Prabhupada said, just tell him to chant Allah. He said, you can chant Allah. Very, very liberal, very, very liberal in that sense. I don't know how we got to. So anyway, yeah, it comes from the, what is our situation? Our situation is very, very good. Because somehow or another, we had the good fortune of, I mean, being born in the West can have its challenges sometimes. I mean, many times it wasn't like what it wasn't like when Brahma, I think I told you this before, when Brahmatirtha was teaching science in Bihar, the, I think Bihar, is that the least educated state in India? It's the least, like 80% illiteracy or 70% illiteracy. It's really, really a tough place. So Brahmatirtha is there teaching science in a small village, and they all these people come and say, "Oh, you're from America. It's so rich. Everyone's so rich." He comes from Jersey. He comes from New Jersey. So, you know, I mean, money, and there's no people in New Jersey that, you know. And so they asked. They said, "No, no." He said, "Do you have somebody that comes and help cleans the house?" They said, "Yes." "Do you have somebody that cleans the bathroom?" "No, the housekeeper cleans the bathroom." Because in India, the housekeeper doesn't clean the bathroom. The Bangubala comes and cleans the bathroom. It's like a special category of cleaner that cleans the bathroom there. And they said, "Well, what kind of car does your cleaner drive?" Of course, it was an African American lady that bought a 10-year-old Cadillac. And so he said that she drives a Cadillac. And so, see, even the house cleaners in India drive Cadillac. Even the roads are made out of gold. And so this is the illusion. But we were born in that place where, you know, that we have the ability to come out of our situation. We do have the ability to come out of any type of situation here. And if we put our hearts to it, more or less, I'll just say more or less. So that's a great opportunity. So we have the chance to take up the process of Krishna consciousness. And the fact that Srila Prabhupada came here only 50 plus years ago, you know, to be in that atmosphere, and as we mature in our Krishna consciousness, I don't want to say I mean, admiration is also a word, but our understanding of who this personality of that Prabhupada was that came here, who that personality was, becomes more and more clear as we move on in age and practicing Krishna consciousness. Just like today, I went for my annual doctor's, well, just to meet the doctor, have a new doctor now, outside of Ananteshwar, but I have to do my blood work, which doesn't matter for Vata. And they, on their thing, occupation, I put monk. How long? 46 years. So the lady, "Dude, you've been like a monk for 46 years. And I'm dressed like this. And so actually the lady said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I was born in America. I came, you know." "You look so different." She couldn't understand. And anyway, the doctor took a book. He took Bhagavad Gita, that book, Perfect Question, Perfect Answers, because I was, the doctor's always a little delayed. So I was just sitting there reading it when he came in, and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Perfect Question, Perfect Answer." My friend was the person that was from Bihar, teaching in Bihar, met Prabhupada in Mayapur, and they had a conversation. And he said, "Oh, that's really interesting." I said, "It's a gift." So the doctor's got, he said, "I'm going to look into this, check this out." He says, "I'm a Christian." I said, "Very good." We had a conversation about the 4 regulative principles and the 10 commandments, bringing everybody up to the mode of goodness. Purpose, Prabhupada said they're the same. 10 commandments and 4 regulative principles are the same. I've explained that to this group before. I was listening to a lecture at the lake one day, and I think, how is it 10 commandments? Don't steal, don't kill. And Prabhupada said, because they're meant to bring people to the mode of goodness, meant to regulate people's lives. So that the principle is the same. The principle of it may not be exactly the same in the wordage, but in the principle of them is the same. So I was explaining that to him. And I said, because if we can get ourselves in the mode of goodness, then we can have our brain will be clear to understand the teachings of whatever bona fide scripture one follows. I said, we want that clarity. We want that clarity of mind. I said, if the mode of passion is just so active, it's very difficult to get that vision and what to speak. And then I kind of like collapsed in the chair and imitated the mode of ignorance. I said, there's no hope. If you're in the mode of ignorance, there's literally zero possibility of spiritual understanding. Of course, even Srila Prabhupada said that if the person addicted to wine just appreciates God making the wine taste so good, that person is making advancement. Even that, on that, what would you say? Is that would you call it like a base level of understanding? I guess you could call it that, like understanding that the flavor of the wine is coming from God and God is so good. He's making this so nice for me. Any other takeaways or questions? Did that help? Maybe I didn't understand your question, George, or hey, according to what you told me.
Maharaj, thank you.
So, like, I remember one devotee was saying this, that in amongst all Prabhupada books, what he wrote, there are very few places where he indirectly tried to mention about himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of the verse where Prabhupada establishes that, like, he is not an ordinary person who has written these books,
Mm-hmm.
and he establishes the relation behind that.
Mm.
He establishes the relationship between the parampara system, also how he, what was his origin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, very nice takeaway. Yeah. Probably say even I read Krishna book. Anything else from our esteemed group? If not, we do 43. We might have enough time to do 43. It's only a small paragraph. Smith, do you want to read? Have you read before? Smith? Can you read tonight? You got.
Yeah, sure, Maharaj. Okay. Do you want me to read the Sanskrit as well, Maharaj?
Do you like to chant the Sanskrit? Okay.
I can try.
Okay.
If you want. Okay. Tatra tam bhuti samyogam labhate purvadehikam yattate cha tato bhuya samsiddho guru nandana. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Purport. King Bharata, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharata was the emperor of the world, and since his time, this planet has been known among the demigods as Bharatavarsha. Formerly, it was known as Ilavratavarsa. The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection, but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in the family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jata Bharata because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors, or the practice of yoga, never go in vain. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for completed perfection in Krishna consciousness.
Oh, wasn't that nice? That was nice. Not only the reading, but just what we read. So nice. Some takeaways? Guru Bhakti, got your hand up.
Hare Krishna, it was the previous verse. So Srila Prabhupada said that all these American boys and girls were sent by his Guru Maharaj, and that those who have taken birth in devotional or pious families do so after a long time of a yogi who fails after a long time. So the youth who are born in our movement, they're also special souls, aren't they? And then, so what? So two questions: how do we best nurture them right? Or help. And then what do we do wrong that people turn away?
The best way to nurture them, I think, was set by Srila Prabhupada's example. How he nurtured us, trying to take the best, our best qualities and amplifying them, and in a positive way, correcting whatever uh, we lacked. And my experience with the youth is that it varies. I mean, it varies according to the degree. But to make them not want to leave, the best way is that we become exemplary in our behavior, and we become exemplary in our behavior. I guess actions is the same way. We just become exemplary devotees, not fanatical devotees. Exemplary. There's a difference between exemplary and fanatical. Prabhupada was very, very strict with him. The way he, but he was exemplary by his, what did he say? I guess example. He said his example. He set a very good example for us for ourselves, as his students, not to tolerate nonsense. But the way he taught us, it's like I'm reading this book, and Prabhupada was so kind. I mean, we hear Prabhupada roaring from the Vyasa-san. We hear Prabhupada roaring from the Vyasa-san. And that's one aspect of Prabhupada. But the people that have experience of Prabhupada, we don't want to just make Prabhupada the Vyasa-san Prabhupada. We don't want to make Prabhupada just that type of person. That's one aspect. And then when you get into the personal life of Prabhupada and how he dealt with people on a personal level, that's what you're talking about here, our children. So when we're dealing with our children, it has to be a very personal level, and understanding to err is human. When that's what I used to always tell the boys, they say to err is human, to forgive is divine. So I would say, okay, gentlemen, I'll remain on the divine platform here. I'll remain on the divine platform, kind of as a joke, to err is human. I said, okay, to err is human, especially if you're a teenager. Actually, it's all a mess. I mean, teenagers is a little more confusing because the change is so quick, but it's all a mess. And how to keep them is to love them and to just let them know, and to have a relationship with them. And you can read all kinds of books. I gave one in this community here. There are 4 families that had babies around the same time, and I gave them all book. Listen so your kids will speak, and speak so your kids will listen, or something. It's a book to learn how to learn. In other words, listen to learn. Listen so your children will speak, and speak so your children will listen. In other words, there's a way we can speak where our children won't listen, and there's a way to listen so that our children will actually speak to us. I remember one time I told one of the boys. They claim I raised over 150. I just trying to figure it all out, but I mean the statistical analysis there. Oh yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, and I just remembered. So I told the young man, because they live with me, they travel with me, they live with me 9 months out of the year in school, 8-9 months in school, and the rest of it was in the summer, going from temple to temple, doing Rath Yatra festivals. And I said, when I was a teenager, my parents maybe knew 25, 35% of what I was doing, maybe, and what I was thinking, maybe like 10. when I was a teenager, I don't know. And I said, what was my percentages with you guys? Oh, Mars, we couldn't hide it. Yeah. I said, dude, give me a break. And he said, well, maybe you knew like 35, 40, maybe a little bit more than your parents. And so the teenager years are one thing. And so, but that's the age, especially like with teens, it's explained. I think it's, I don't know if it's part of Ayurveda or not, but it's certainly part of the Vedas. Probably said when they become like 15, 16, you have to treat them like a friend. You can't, in other words, it has to become, they have to be just like, why friend? Because friends reveal they reveal things that's in their heart to each other. And if you haven't developed a friendship, it's just like when people come over here to see me, I can be in here with 3 or 4 I say, I don't have that many. Of course, everyone's important, but I like big shots in my room. Even if it's a temple president or whatever, when the little kids come walking by to go over to the park to play, I say, excuse me, I walk out the door and I go, Moni, 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 Rungi, 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 Kanya, 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 where are you going, what's happening? And I say everything in threes. And it's on purpose. I think it's Shakespeare says there's a method to our madness. Isn't it Shakespeare that said something like that? There's a method to the madness. And so the thing is, now all these, Sri Rupa, not our Sri Rupa here, but Sri Rupa Tansi, whom I used to think you were, he came over one day and he was so happy because his kids were saying to each other, Vera, Vera, what you doing? That's not right. You shouldn't do. And so what's happened is they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and the trust, what would you say, account is very, very rich. In other words, their trust in me is from their youth is very, very strong. So that when they do become a teenager, they'll know, and I'll treat them as they grow. You develop it, and hopefully they'll be able to open the heart. I'd like to be able to be there to help them through any and every struggle that they may have. And another thing is confidentiality, to keep our youth and to keep our devotees. Nothing doesn't what to speak of our youth is to keep our devotees. The process of Dadati Priti Granati exchange, the 6 loving exchanges, the middle one, which is revealing one's mind confidentially and confidentially hearing from someone, is very, very important. And the word is confidential. If we can't be confidential, just like the boys will tell you, all those boys they raise, you can put me in a what do you call it? What do you call it? Like some kind of Dracula castle torture chamber, or the stretcher machine, or the grinder machine, or something like that. And I'm not going to tell you what they told me. They all know it. They'll say who, and I say what? Who? What are you, a bunch of owls? I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to. They go, who, Mars? Who? I go, what are you, a bunch of owls? I'm not going to tell you who. I'm not going to tell you what. I'm not going to tell you when. And they know it. So that when you have that level of confidentiality, so that the children can count on that, and not only the children but our devotees. It's so important for the devotees. One time, 10, 15, 20 years ago, somebody said that the Hare Krishna movement needs a confessional booth. Like we need like a confessional booth, because if you just whisper, I'm eating too much chocolate, and the next thing I know, the whole world knows, and you're being preached to, and you're being outed, but this group will out you because Prabhupada said you're not supposed to take chocolate. This group will let you stay in because Prabhupada said it's okay. You know, it's just like insane. There's when we become very expert at working our way, giving people an excuse to get out. We should be giving them excuses to stay in, or not excuses, reasons. We should actually be giving people reasons to stay in, not excuses to leave. Because it doesn't take much of an excuse to leave. It can be the littlest thing, because the false ego is each one of us has a very unique false ego. I don't know if I've explained this. Just like I have my false ego, you have your false ego. They're all unique. Sometimes they're based on gender, sometimes they're based on age, they're based on upbringing, they're based on nature, nurture, they're based on all these different things, and we all have a very, very unique psychological. We have a very nice, or very unique false ego, and what one false ego can take, another one won't be able to take. Just like they say, one person's food is another person's poison. And so we don't know what that person's poison is. We don't know what that person's, what's going to push that person's button to make them go out. So we have to be very, very aware of our relationships with Vaishnavas. We want to make it so encouraging that no one will ever want to leave. No one would ever want to leave. And all it takes is, not all, but what it takes is the ability to hear. We have to develop because everything is hearing. And so being able to hear from the person and to keep that confidential. Keep that confidential. I got the award from TKG. He told me one time, you're the most confidential person I've ever had. You know, and he said, I've told you things that I wouldn't tell anybody. I said, why'd you do that? He says, I know you won't tell him. I said, you told me that. You told me because you know I won't remember. We had a little rust. we had a little. And so that confidentiality is so necessary. So how do we raise them? We raise them as we raise all Vaishnavas, with love and care. And we have to have that. I mean, I don't know if I'm going off on your question, Guru Bhakti, or not, but this is a very important question, because we see that happy Vaishnavas make more Vaishnavas. Unhappy Vaishnavas don't make. It's very difficult if we're not situated, if we're not in a happy place. And it's not that we have to be on. That's not what we're talking about. What it means is contentment at heart. That just like when I joined the movement, I did it purposely. I purposely entered into the Hare Krishna movement because I found people. Remember one time I was in college and one of our friends, he kind of disappeared, and all of a sudden somebody got a letter. The letter was, greetings. I found my people, Pat. And that was it. That was the letter. I found my people. I don't know which people he found, but that was it. That was back in it was like early 70s, late 60s. And so I don't know which people he found, but he found them. And so when I met the devotees, it was like outstanding. After visiting for a weekend, I didn't want to go. And it took a while takes a little while to unwind the material world. And then you have to dive in for one last taste and then really get kicked. And then you realize that, okay, yeah. Yeah. So this is, I guess, my general response to you, Guru Bhakti, is that care, genuine care. And understanding not everyone's the same. Something take away, something to add, Guru Bhakti?
No, thank you so much. Very useful.
Yeah. I find it's just, I mean, I've told you all many times that this is like the second, third or fourth place I've been to since COVID hit. I mean, I went into a doctor's office today, and it was like, wow, this is like, I've been to AutoZone, and I've been to the eyeglass place, and now I've been to a doctor's office. And so the lady checked that when you first go in and you give your driver's license and your insurance card. And after I said, man, you're really good at your job. And it was like the first time somebody said something nice to her, and she said, thank you. I said, I always try to be nice to people because I figure you may have run into somebody that may have not been so pleasant for you today. I just wanted to balance it out a little bit. She says, that's a good idea. I'm going to start doing that myself. And so even on a material level, it's necessary. What to speak on a spiritual level? Spiritual level, it's like faith. Faith is described to be like fine china. Once it cracks, very, very difficult to put it back together again. Fine china. Of course, there's a type of Asian china I think it's from Japan, that when they put it back together with gold, like gold inlaid broken vases and stuff like that, they put it together, and they became even more valuable. Something I can't remember. There's a name for them. I guess it's not important. But the point is like our faith is so fragile. It's actually very fragile. Therefore, association of Vaishnavas is so essential to maintain our faith. But if the Vaishnavas aren't sustaining it, not only sustaining it, but increasing it, then we stand a chance that the obvious result will be that some people's faith will be reduced to the point where they search for it someplace else. They search for it someplace else. Everybody, we're human. We have we need interaction. Very few people are born, to be cave dwellers or hermits. Very, very few. Some other takeaways from these two verses. I really like the last verse, especially the last two sentences of the purport. You want to read the last two sentences, Smith?
Sure, Maharaj. From his life, From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never go in vain. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness.
Isn't that nice? I mean, for me, that's like from his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never go in vain. Nice verse. Nehabi Karmanastati Petravayam Vidyate Swapamapya Sudharma Shatayate. In this endeavor, there's no loss of diminution, and a little advancement can protect us from the most dangerous types of fear. And not only does it not go in vain, but by the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities. Not only does the opportunity come just in this, we'll get that same opportunity life after life, and we keep building upon it. This is something we have to understand, that we're building up our spiritual bank account. We're really building up our spiritual bank account to come to the point where we get out of jail free card, or what I don't know what we call it, the key to get out. It's like Prabhupada said, I have the key to the back door. I can let you in at 75% or something like that to Mahamaya. I think he said that to Mahamaya. And because it was like cent percent, I think he started, I don't know, 95, 90, 85, 80, went down. I think he went down to 75. Okay, 75%, I got a key to the back door, I'll let you in. And so, but this is our good fortune. It's a very, very good fortune to be in this situation like this.
Guru Maharaj, text 43 just to me, it just screams that there's absolutely no reason not to try even a little bit.
Mm.
There's like no reason at all not to try, you know?
Yeah, no matter what we do, we're trying to do something. So why not do something that has eternal benefit? Anyone else? Some takeaways, some reflections. I'm stuck in that takeaway. Any reflections?
Guru Bhakti's comment. I mean, in the Western culture, it's not useful to befriend your children. In fact, quite in the psychotherapy field, we work to undo that kind of relationship because it's become unhealthy. So, and I know that this is, a very different scenario, but I'm not sure, how does a relationship, friending an adolescent, how does that play out in the future of the parent and the child? Because you're the Maharaj, and you're the counselor, and you're with them all the time, but you're not the parent. And
Right.
so your position is different, and they need someone like you. You would be a positive role model outside of the house. I mean, you're their guru, but you're also a positive role model. And so it's useful for someone outside of the family to or the parent dyad to befriend a child, mentor a child or a teenager. And how does this play out when these kids grow up if their parents friend them? Now Natasha's talked to me a little bit about this, and I just listen, but I don't really know. I don't know this in detail. How does this play out with once the girls marry, once they become young adults, they get into college, this friendship? I mean, does this friendship with the parent continue? And does that
yes.
interrupt their marriage?
No. It's the friendship, I think, maybe I didn't explain it properly. 16-year-old, you begin is the beginning. You begin to, they're no longer a kid. And if you treat them just like little kids, it doesn't work anymore. So you have to begin to treat them. And they say 15, 16 years old, something like that. But I've had boys that were like 14 that needed it. And I had boys that didn't need it until they're like 17. Right. And so it's an individual thing like that. But it's a less, it's something that goes along just like when a little child, when they learn how to protect themselves from getting, like a little child will pick up a knife. But when they become old enough to know not to pick up the knife, they're given a little extra space. So because they're not going to do that. So in teenage life, that befriending begins. Just like, like, of course, I wasn't a very good kid. I was not very nice to my parents, and I don't know, it was because I wasn't ever befriended, or if it was because I was just the black sheep of the family. I'm not sure, but the idea that I have was, and I see families, not me being that person, but I see families that, what do they have a new name? They used to call it helicopter parent, they helicopter parenting. Now they have a new word for it, like GPS parenting. I don't know what it is, you know, where there's no latitude, there's no longitude, there's, you know, it's hovering over. And so what happens is that because teenage life means that, you know, the body's going through so many biological changes, physiological changes, and you're becoming a young adult, that when that hovering, when that constant pressure that you get when you're a little kid for protection needs to change into how you would protect someone becoming an adult. Just like, you know, when I go to of course I haven't been over to the school, but when I go to the school, the little kids that are in school, they're, you know, I talk to them one way, but the kids that are in high school, I talk a completely different way. And so when I've seen parents that, you know, it's not that the respect doesn't go away. It just is like an elder friend is respected by a younger friend. Like I had some older friends when I was a kid. They had a lot of respect. In fact, you wanted to, what do you call it? Emulate, what's the word? Be like them? I don't know, there's a word kind of like, you kind of like you look up to them, but you were still friends. You were still open, and you had the ability to open up and stuff like that. So that's what I'm talking about. So that ability to earn that conversation with your child. We earn that right. You know, it's not, you can't be forced. What is well, there's a saying, you earn, there's something like that. What is it? Earn respect, don't demand respect. You have to earn that. We have to earn the respect. And a lot of times what we see in our youth, in our society, as the parents tell them to do one thing, but they don't do it. Just like when my parents both smoked cigarettes. We had like 10 packs in a box inside the refrigerator. I don't know why they were in the refrigerator, I guess to keep them fresh. I don't know. And so when I was like 15 or 16, I decided, let me have a cigarette. You can't smoke. That's, you know, dude, both you guys smoke, you know. I didn't say dude back then, but, you know, it's like both of you guys smoke, you know, we're adults. You know, we can do that. So, you know, 16, 17, my parents, yeah, you smoke, right? Smoke. And so, if a lot of times we see that parents that expect more from their children than they expect from themselves, causes friction. So that level ability to communication is like it's not just us communicating to them. Communication is a back and forth exchange. And in order to have the back and forth exchange, there has to be a little bit of trust. That if I come out of the box and say that, you know, or like my mother, when I was in the 6th grade, said, "You don't have a girlfriend?" I would never tell her I had a girlfriend. I had a girlfriend when I was in the 1st grade. Well, it's none of her business, you know. Sorry, I Smith. But you're a young adult now, so you can handle it, you know. And but it wasn't something I was going to tell my mother, because that level, you know, because she'd be going through the neighborhood, yeah, all right, yeah. We tell her Mars got a girlfriend, you know what I mean? You know, and then all the ladies would come around and pinch my cheek. Hey, I heard you got a girlfriend. Yeah. Jeez, man, read between the lines. Man. I just like, forget it, you know, just forget it. You have to like, it has to be real. That confidentiality. But it's not that, and how does it work? You know, I've seen it. I've seen parents that do like that. And I've seen parents that are oppressed, and I don't want to use the word oppressive, but, you know, they they expect more than they, they just expect more than is required. It's good to give the children, like, what would you say, good advice to progress. I mean, that's not improper, but a lot of times it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You can say something in a way that brings a person down. You can say something that brings a person up. The same thing. It's just a matter of, it can be just the tone of it. It's just the tone of it. Braja Bhumi, you've seen your hand up for a long time, over 3-4 minutes past. I don't want to get in trouble with our Ayurvedic doctor not taking rest on time. So one quick one.
No, I was just, what you say is exactly correct. What you just said, I was going to add that when she asked you that question, I was like, well, Maharaj had children, but he didn't have children. But you said everything correctly, because I have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
One haven't spoken in 4, almost 5 years, because I raised her as, I'm your mother, you do as I say, even all the way through college. We didn't develop a friendship. Whereas with Kumari, we're very close. She's 26 and we're very close. And I can come up to her and even confide in her, and vice versa, and even ask for advice sometimes in some things. But that's because I raised her different than the oldest. And I can see how the relationships develop differently. I made the mistake where I almost suffocated, and I was very controlling, and I was, being the mother after the oldest one to make sure that she made all the right decisions. But I never opened up to her and said, I'm telling you because this is the mistakes I made. Whereas with the youngest one, I was able to open up and become her friend, say, hey, and tell her this, I'm human, these are the mistakes I made. So these are the reasons why I'm doing the things I'm doing. And we developed that friendship slowly to, you can see how close we are. And she comes to me for advice, and she's very open with me about everything. And I can see that difference because I developed that sort of friendship that slowly blossom. So I can see how it works because I had the experience.
Nice.
So I just wanted to share that when she says, how does it work? Well, it does.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, Ananteshwar, on that positive note, very positive note.
Yes, Maharaj. Today's session was very practical and deep.
Yeah, very good, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I really appreciate and thank you.
It's all due to the Vaishnavas opening their hearts.
Yes, Maharaj.
Boy, we have a couple of school teachers we can see here. Shri Rupa Manjari's got all her paper, color papers like that. Raja Bhumi's over there. Missing Balaram Shakti today because he's teaching yoga. So. Anyway, we'll see you next week. And today is Lord Raha's appearance day, and tomorrow's Lord Nityananda's appearance day. I gave class on, what day did I give class? I gave class for Nityananda's appearance day last Sunday here in Dallas.
Sunday.
Yeah, and I'll be giving class on Thursday in Atlanta because Nityananda's appearance day is Thursday in Atlanta. Here in Dallas, we got to fast today for Varaha, and we got to fast for Nityananda. And tomorrow, Nityananda's appearance day, which is the day we have to break fast, we get to break fast on a fasting day, whereas other people have to have 2 fasting days.
Okay.
I think it's the same. It's the same in Houston, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah. I mean, when we got that, before we printed up our, Kalachandji calendar, I had to call them. I immediately got onto the thing and VCal, the Vaishnava calendar thing, and I said, something's off here. you can't get a free fast day. It's impossible to get that. And then they're explaining that the Sudha Kadasi wasn't fit. Ekadasi day wasn't fit, so the Dwadasi day had to be the day, but that happened to be the day. But anyway, a lot of technical stuff. When I joined the movement, when it was Ekadasi in Mayapur, it was Ekadasi all over the world. When it was Gorpanim in Mayapur, it's Gorpanim all over the world. Now we divided it into like every little motion of the moon and sun, and life was much simpler back then. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. Okay, see you all next week if Krishna willing. Hare Krishna. Nice that everybody had their camera on today. Thank you. I should have invited guys.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Now, Gurjan, they sent me a big, nice picture of Govardhan Hill.
Hi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Hare